Hi, today we're going to be talking about the first section of the CMX Community Trends Report for 2023. That is the section on the community professional. I'm Todd Nielsen with Clocktower Advisors, and the Clocktower Advisors community channel is all about community building and some of the best practices and ways that we can create trust and bring people together and help them to connect and make beautiful music together in online spaces. I have been working in the online community space since 2013 through various consultancies, but since 2015, my company Clocktower Advisors has been providing help with organizations and their online community strategies and digital workplaces for literally dozens of companies across the world. So I'm always excited to see what's happening in the CMX Community Trends Report. It's one of several reports that come out on an annual basis that are based on surveys of community professionals who are generous enough with their time to give back and talk about what their experiences have been. This first section of the report, CMX knows who their audience is, community professionals, is about the profession of being in community. We're going to go through this one piece at a time and figure out what some of the takeaways are this year, actually comparing back against the previous year's report in 2022. Let's get started. The section begins on page 9. The profile of a community professional section, starting on page 10, has a couple of questions that have shown up in prior years. The first of which is, please describe the nature of your community building work. And the second one is, how many years of experience do you have as a community manager or professional? My takeaways from this were a couple. So first of all, full-time community employee and spending 100% of your time on community building. 62% said that this was their full-time job. What was new on this year's report? So those numbers didn't really vary very much from 2022. But the new piece that was here this year was the option that I'm a community consultant or freelancer. Now, this is a personal interest. The consulting space is something that is opening up as a career path, I'd say, a little more this year than in prior years. And those of us that have been working in community consulting for some time can react to this in one of two ways, either in defensiveness or derision, or by embracing it and recognizing that there is an abundance of need out there. And it's not always a full-time community professional that's needed in an organization. Sometimes it's somebody who has the perspective of working in many different organizations and can bring their experience to bear on a contract basis or as a fractional chief community officer. So I was glad to see that representation in the report this year. I think it's heartening. As one of the founding members of the Community Consultants Collective, I'm obviously thrilled to see that there are people that are looking at consulting as a career path, as a career option. My worry is that with so many people, like I think based on this report, out of the 425 responses, 7% said that they are a community consultant or freelancer, and there's some more stats on this a little bit later. That equals up to maybe about 30 people if all 425 people responded to this particular question. So that's a pretty fair number. I know within the Community Consultants Collective, we're sitting somewhere north of 75 people or so that have joined us who are either identifying as a full-time community consultant or as individuals who are exploring that as an option. So those numbers don't seem too far off to me, just kind of looking at it from that perspective. The second question here is around how many years of experience do you have as a community manager or professional? These numbers really didn't change a bunch. The sweet spot is still the 5 to 7 year experience range. It's down, I think, a percentage point from 2022. What kind of stuck out to me was, again, those consultants or those community professionals with 10 years or more of experience constituted about 20% of the people that responded to the survey. Now, that is interesting. It tells me that we have a mature or a maturing professional base of people that are in the work that we do. And it also means that I'm old. So I'm really interested to see this. The other thing that kind of stood out for me was that for those individuals who are less than a year, There were only 8% of those who responded to the survey, and that number was down from 2022. So again, thinking about the layoffs that have happened this year, that maybe makes some sense. And then those who were in the 1 to 2 years of experience range were up in the responses. So they were 21%, so it went up a couple of percentage points from 22. Again, not a lot of movement, not a lot of change, but my big takeaway was around consultants in the space and thinking about like how the layoffs in the marketplace, the contraction of the marketplace has had an impact on who's responded here, within the survey. Switching over to page 11, there's another question here about which option best describes your experience level. And rather interesting, what stayed the same was the associate or specialist area. About 19% identified themselves as being at that level of career experience. That didn't change. The number of people who said they were a manager, a director, or a VP, those percentages all went up. So it's telling me that there is a bit of a career path here, or at least suggests that there is one, and that individuals are matriculating into roles of greater responsibility in their organizations. Now, executive or C-level, however, the bad news there is that percentage is down a little bit, it's just at 2%. And founders were way down, actually, at least significantly down. So the number of people who identified their level as a founder of an organization was just 2%. That was 8% in 2022. So less of an appetite for entrepreneurship, maybe just luck of the draw with who responded to the survey. Again, one of the problems with the methodology of the CMX survey is it is self-select bias. So the people who respond are the people who've been marketed to. It's not that a random sampling has truly been reached out to here. So you always have to take that into consideration with this. The following page, page 12, is interesting about demographics for our space. And some of these numbers have shifted a little bit since 2022 in terms of who responded to the survey. The number of women has gone up from 64 to 69%. The number of men who responded to the survey has gone down significantly from 35% down to 29%. So a big drop in the number of men who responded to the survey, and those who identify as non-binary were up to 2%. So still a fairly small percentage. The numbers on racial or ethnic identity on this page really didn't shift very much. The biggest numbers that moved here were percentage points from South Asia or Southeast Asia. They were down 3 and 4 percentage points respectively. And I, noted that as far as the map of all the countries in the world where the respondents came from, it looks like Australia joined the fray this year. They didn't appear on the map last year. Actually, Indonesia was the only one that was showing up there, and they weren't there this time around. UK is still, actually growing stronger. It went from 8 to 9%, a little bit of growth. US was probably more strongly represented than it has been previously. It was up by about 7 percentage points at 57%. Not exactly what I wanted to see. Just the U.S. still has a little bit too much of an outsized influence on community space, and I guess we just do more of it here. A lot of it started here, so it is what it is. The next pages are around the type of work that community professionals focus on, and kind of taking a look at some of these areas. There were 2 key questions, and I'll spend a little bit of time on these. What else do you work on in addition to community? Here, it's listing other kinds of areas in the business that you may be involved with. Those include things like marketing, communications, content creation, social media, product development, HR, people ops, and PR. And then there's an other category. Pretty much minimal changes here from last year. What I'll say is marketing grew. So the number of community professionals who are doing marketing went up by about 5 percentage points. Product development people went down by about 5 percentage points. Interesting fluctuation. 5% is not that big of a difference. Ideally, if this was a statistically significant survey, and it could be at 425 respondents, but because of the self-select bias, we don't know if it is 5% error or less what's here. So, take it for what it is. It may not be significant. but it's something to keep an eye on as we look at the report in future years. The one piece that I'll give as feedback to the CMX team, though, is the other category showing up as 45% responded that they're doing other duties. That's up 2 percentage points. I think that's worthy of a little bit of a gloss here. Provide me with some details about what are some of the things that people said. I'd love to know a little bit more information about what's involved there. The second question on page 14 is, what is your role with your community? And there were some changes on the response options to this question from 2022, I noticed. A new question here was, do you build the strategy for your organization? Which it makes sense. If you're a community professional, there's a pretty good chance that you're involved with the strategic direction of the community. And if you are responsible for performing that role, we're asking if you do that. So that was at 79% this year. So it wasn't possible to compare that with last year because it wasn't a question on the survey last year. Another wrinkle between the question last year and this year is the way that they asked for a response to it. In the 2022 report, the question was more granular. It was asking whether you do this role full-time, part-time, or you don't do it at all. And so it was actually giving a little bit of a breakdown for each of those percentages. So it's not really comparable what's here, because this is just sort of asking generically. And if you actually add up the numbers from the 2022 report of do you do this full-time or part-time, it doesn't even give you a comparable number to what's here. The numbers are so skewed and off. I don't know how to judge it. And maybe someone from the CMX team has got a thought about that. The other items here, I'll just kind of go down through them fairly quickly. So by way of example, and what I mean why these things aren't comparable, the second top role for community was that you engage directly with the community. Now, this is pretty commonplace for community professionals, that you are the front line of interacting with customers or prospects or fans or members, for your organization. And in the 2022 report, if you added the part-time and the full-time role responsibility, that would add up to about 98% of the people who responded said, yeah, I'm involved with that. This year, 78% said they were doing that. I don't know what these community professionals are doing otherwise. Maybe they're in the operations side of things. Maybe they're in some kind of other management role. But that was interesting to me. But again, I have no way to compare 2022 versus 2023 with this data. The next item here, focusing on operations and processes, 63% said that. I'm just going to go back to people that said that they did this full-time in the 2022 report. 35% of the people who responded in 2022 said that that was their full-time role, focusing on operations and processes. 63% now. Again, those numbers are so far apart. I don't know how to interpret that. There was another new question. I'm sorry, I didn't mention that before. That was that you lead the community team. Now, 58% of the people who responded, so over half of the 425 people who responded, said that they led the community team. I'm trying to square this against some of the other messaging that teams are contracting to teams of one. So I guess you could say you lead the community team if you're just one person, but I don't know how to deal with that. So I'll just kind of leave that question where it is. It doesn't necessarily help me that much to know. Running in-person or live events, that's interesting, was on last year. 24% in 2022 said that was their full-time gig, running in-person or virtual live events. 53% in this year's report. Designing community products and experiences, that was 28% said they did that in 2022. 51% say that they're designing community products and experiences in 2023. Growing the community through marketing, 47% versus 24% in 2022. Developing education and training, 38% versus 23% in 2022. And running chapter-based events or programs, that's 21 versus 15% in 2022. One thing was missing from the 2022 question that was not carried forward into 23. If someone identified that they manage community governance and voting structures, I'm assuming that's got something to do with a decentralized autonomous organization, a DAO in Web3 parlance, but I'm not sure what the context of that question was. They probably yanked it because it was a little bit unclear. But I think managing governance is a question that's still worth having on there. Is that part of your role? Managing governance for the organization? I sure hope it is. So something to think about for the future. Page 15 gets us into the question of the salary data. And they admit in the description here that the salary sample sizes are borked. Is a technical term that I've just made up, but the idea is that they just didn't get enough people, and they said, look, these are just U.S. numbers. Last time around, the sample size was much larger. There were over 700 people that responded to the survey. We're down to 425 this time around. Again, contraction of the industry perhaps, or maybe it just wasn't marketed as well, or maybe people just didn't choose to respond for whatever reasons. When they asked the question last year in 2022, they said, hey, even if you're globally based, if you're overseas, give us your numbers in US dollars of what you made for a salary so we can figure that in. That being said, the numbers are not that different from 2022 to 2023. If you look at the salary differences for an associate, for example, which is probably the most glaring difference that I'm seeing here, that one looks kind of far off. In 2022, they said that the salary was about $86,340 annually. 2023 was $100,934. What the heck happened? In a contracting market, you're telling me that you're making more money as an associate to start? Something is off there. Doesn't sound right to me. I would be suspicious of that data. And plus, I don't think an entry-level person commands that kind of salary. I just don't. I've been recruiting for many years before I moved into this space, and unless you're in some kind of strange West Coast bubble or East Coast bubble, or living in some place where there's high salaries required to maintain a place of living and to have a standard of living, you're not going to see those numbers. As far as some of the other roles, though, something else that was interesting was that the VP or founder or exec position and compensation were dropped from the survey results here. So maybe they didn't have enough information, or nobody responded with that. I don't know what the case happens to be. I did want to note here as well, under the years of experience column, for 3 to 4 years of experience, the 2022 number is incorrect. Based on the 2022 numbers from the original report, that should have read as 110,992. And of course, then the 3 to 4 years of experience for 2023 is 119,709. I think those are a lot more comparable. It's a closer together number. So again, if you're in that 3 to 4 years of experience category, this will matter to you maybe, and help you as you're thinking about salary negotiations, or if you're thinking of hiring somebody in our space, this may give you some things to think about as we go forward. All right, turning to page 16, job satisfaction. This is a new section. In 2022, there was a section about frustrations with the job of community professional. This time around, there's a table here on how important are each of these aspects of your job. How satisfied are you? And then there's about 6 areas here: salary, whether you have sufficient budget and staff, having an impact, opportunities for advancement, leadership that trusts me to do my job, bonuses and other financial compensation, and flexible work structure, or flexible work schedule, I should say. It's kind of a wacky graphic, but as you kind of let it wash over you and see what it's saying, it looked like the biggest gap between whether someone is very satisfied or they find that it's very important and they're very satisfied with how important the aspect of the job happens to be. The biggest areas of gap are between salary and having an impact on the job. So in other words, 81% of the people surveyed said that salary was important to them, and 40% of them said that they were very satisfied with their salary levels. So there's hunger to make more money in the profession, which I totally get. The idea of having an impact, 86% of people in the survey said that having an impact was really important to them in the job. And there was a gap there of about 39 percentage points. Only 47% said they felt like they were satisfied that they had made the gap that they wanted to. So dissatisfaction is good. That's hunger to do better. And hopefully you're able to do that in 2023. The other item that was kind of interesting was that leadership that trusts me to do my job figured very highly in terms of importance. 95% of those surveyed said that was super important. Trust is number one for them, and actually didn't perform badly in terms of satisfaction. 64% of those people said that they were very satisfied with their trust level that they have from leadership. So they're feeling like they've got leadership support by and large, not entirely across the board, but at least to some extent. Page 17, turning to the question of layoffs. CMX indicates that about 12% of the survey respondents said that they've been laid off in the past 2 years. That's about 51 out of the 425 people, if you're doing the math. And it said about 59% of the respondents said that they're concerned about losing their jobs. Again, one of the things that stood out on this page to me was the openness or interest in freelancing or consulting work, whether as a community manager or a strategy consultant like myself. That was kind of interesting. And 67% said that they're somewhat or very likely to consider consulting as an alternative to a full-time role. Where this kind of fell in for me this year, kind of looking back to the 2022 report, in 2022, the role of community operations was something that was emerging as a career path. Now, it's been around for a while, but I think like the consciousness of it, presentations at the CMX event were about community operations. Now, this year, it seems to be about the consulting path. So I think like there's, I would say that this continues the trend that was identified back in 2022, that the community industry is maturing. And I think as a space matures, you'll see more and different career paths open up. I think it's totally natural that consulting opens up as another area of this. People are figuring out new ways that they can fit into the space of supporting online communities. And then that takes us to the last page. Page 18 is really about commitment to the industry. And again, this was a new section. And the question is, do you think that you will still be a community professional in the next 2 years, or do you plan to move to a different field? And 67% said that they plan to stay in community. 11% said they want to move to a different field. I get it. Most concerning to me, though, were those who said, I'm not sure. And that was 22%. That's a pretty large number of people in the survey said that maybe I would move somewhere else, which means they can be recruited into other professions. They may move into other areas. Maybe they weren't fully committed to being community professionals in the first place, which is okay. But it would be sad to lose so many people from our space. And we know that they're needed. We know that every company out there, most every company can benefit from having an online community. And so something to think about. Well, I hope you enjoyed this ride going through this section. I'm going to be going into the next section around community operations and programming. So that's going to be in my next video. I hope you sign up for that. And in the meantime, I hope you're good to yourself and that you build great communities.